modify shapes, modify shapes, modify rectangles and rounded rectangles. By the way, you can adjust dimensions and placement of a rectangle, and in Photoshop you can also modify the corner radius of rounded rectangle shapes after they have been drawn, and each corner, by the way, can be adjusted independently, and adjustments can be simultaneously made rectangles on multiple layers, by the way. And what about design improvements in Photoshop? Note and be careful. By the way, if you select multiple rectangles, the values for the for the topmost rectangle are displayed in the properties panel, and the values you type are applied to all selected rectangles. We have steps. Step number 1. You should use the path selection tool to select one or more rectangles or rounded rectangles. Step number 2. To change the dimensions of the rectangle, type values in the W or H text boxes in the properties panel or options bar. And if you don't want to constrain the ratio of the width and height, you should click the link icon in the options bar to unlink the width and height. Step number 3. To change the placement of the rectangle, do any of the following. You should move the content of the layer using the move tool. After that, drag the rectangle using the path selection tool. And in the properties panel, type the pixel and coordinates into the X and Y text boxes. Step number 4. In the properties panel, do any of the following to modify the corner radius. You should type values in the text boxes to adjust the corner radius individually, and then type a value in the radius text box to adjust all corners to the same radius. And in the properties panel, you can also place the pointer over a corner icon and scrub left or right to enter a radius value. So what about set shape stroke options? Set shape stroke options, we have steps. Step number 1. You should use the path selection tool to select the shape whose path you want to modify. Step number 2. In the properties panel or the tool options bar, you should click the set shape stroke type menu icon to open the stroke options panel. Step number 3. In the stroke options panel, do any of the following. You should choose the type of stroke you want. After that, you should click the align icon and choose an option to specify the position of the stroke relative to its base. Step number 3. You should click the caps icon and choose a cap style to specify the appearance of both ends of a path. And after that, boot cap. Boot cap is meaning creates squared ends that about stop at the endpoints. And what about round cap? Round cap is meaning creates semicircular ends that extend half the stroke width beyond the endpoints. And projecting cap is meaning that you should create squared ends that extend half the stroke width beyond the endpoints. This option, by the way, makes the stroke width extend evenly in all directions around the path. And note and be careful. Keep in mind that the caps are not visible unless the path is opened, by the way. And also cap styles are easier to see at thicker stroke widths. And then click the corner icon to the appearance of the stroke at corner point. And what about meter join? Meter join is meaning that you should create pointed corners that extend beyond the endpoint when the meter's length is within the meter limit. So what about round join? Round join is meaning creates rounded corners that extend half the stroke width beyond the endpoints. And what about bevel join? Bevel join is meaning creates squared corners that about the endpoints. And note, like caps or meters and easier to see at thicker stroke widths. And what about save stroke setting? Save stroke setting is meaning after specifying the shape stroke options in the stroke options panel, you can save your newly created stroke type for reuse. And then click the gear icon in the upper right corner of the stroke options panel and choose save stroke. And how to copy and paste shape stroke setting. How to copy and paste a shape stroke setting. By the way, after specifying shape stroke options, you can apply the setting. You can apply the setting to another shape by copying and pasting. By these steps, we have 4 steps now. Step number 1. You should click the gear icon in the upper right corner of the stroke options panel and choose copy stroke details. Step number 2. You should select the shape you want to modify. Step number 3. In the properties panel or tools options bar, you should click the set shape stroke type menu icon to open the stroke options panel. Step number 4. You should click the gear icon in the upper right corner of the stroke options panel and choose paste stroke details.